Welcome to Blitz Take. Welcome to the Blitz Take episode number 5. I am here with StateOfTheU.com's John Michaels to talk about this upcoming season for Miami and how it'll look like for them. So welcome.
What's up? How are you doing today?
I'm good. So what are your initial thoughts on the schedule for this season?
You know, when I look at Miami, it's pretty simple. It's kind of a 2-game schedule, but a lot of caveats along the way. Sets up a lot different than what it has in the past couple of years, where Miami's opened up against an Alabama or a Florida or an LSU, and unfortunately fell behind early in the season, took a loss. You know, you think of last year, you played Alabama and Michigan State 2 out of the first 3 weeks. 2 teams that ultimately ended up being top 15 teams. Alabama obviously playing for a national title and losing. This year, it sets up a lot better. Easy home opener against Bethune-Cookman, which I'll be going to coming up in a couple of weeks. Second game against Southern Miss, a little uptick in competition, but not a heck of a lot more. And then you go to Texas A&M, which is your first real, let's see, can this football team play? Then you have another warm-up game, so to speak, against Middle Tennessee State before you dive into conference play. Your toughest road game is at Clemson late in the year. You're going to play them on November the 19th and have a chance, to really see where you match up a team that's right now got the nation's longest home winning streak in the Clemson Tigers. So, you get through that first month. If Miami can pull an upset on the road against Texas A&M, they set up really well to have a super successful season. We can dive into the ACC in a little bit, but I don't like the way the schedule sets up. Not a lot of daunting road games, and it sets up good for Mario in his first year to get his feet wet, win a couple of games, and then go on the road and see what you can do.
What are your thoughts on the quality of the coaching staff?
Oh, love. This is the most Miami coaching staff that you've had really since Butch Davis was there back in the early 2000s. You think about back then, he had Greg Schiano as his defensive coordinator, Rob Chudzinski, who went on to be a head coach in the NFL. That was his OC for a while. Larry Coker was as well. You had different guys like Chuck Pagano and different people that came in and off the staff. I think Mark Stoops was on there for a while. You look now, Miami went out and invested over $100 million in coaches. Number one, Mario Cristobal gets a long-term deal, 10 years and $85 million. He's the best coach, the most qualified coach Miami has had, again, since Butch Davis. Not knocking Mark Richt. Mark Richt did a really good job, but he was at the end of his career kind of rehabbing from Georgia and getting ready for retirement. Then you bring in the Broyles Award winner in Josh Gaddis, who's fantastic. You're going to have an offense that's going to look a lot like Michigan with a mix of Alabama in there. Power running game, big shots in the passing game, which should be great. You bring in Alex Marabella, your offensive line coach, who's one of the most respected coaches in the country. A place where Miami's been really bad the last 20 years, so to speak, is on the O-line. Over on the defensive side, Kevin Steele's coaching the SEC for 20-plus years, so he's got big game mantra. Very aggressive style of defense, which fits with South Florida athletes. And then you bring on a guy like Charlie Strong to coach your linebackers. This is a guy who was the head coach of Texas about 6 years ago, and now he's your linebacker coach. So I really like what Miami's done as a coaching staff. It's just a matter of putting it together on Saturday afternoons and see if they can win.
What are your thoughts on the level of the recruitments that Miami got this year?
The 2022 class was good. He finished, I think, 16th overall in recruiting in the 2022 class, which was fine. But again, that was Mario Cristobal's transition class. By the time February hit, I think Mario only had 3 guys on his staff. It was him, it was Alex Marabella, and Stephen Field, who stuck around as the tight end coach from the previous regime and had worked together with Mario back in Oregon. So did a good job, brought in a couple of elite-type kids, Nigel E. Kelly, who has a chance to play as a true freshman, 4-star defensive end out of Fort Lauderdale Dillard. Brought in Cyrus Moss, obviously a really good player, coming out of Nevada, very high 4-star player. And you brought in some pieces, whether it's Shakuri Brown, a quarterback, or others. When you start to look ahead to the 2023 class, my goodness, this is what Miami wanted with Mario Cristobal, a guy that can go head-to-head, not only with Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, but really run the state shove Billy Napier and Mike Norvell in a locker, so to speak, and take the best of the best. You got the #1 offensive line recruit and one of the top ones. Francis Mangala is already committed. He's building the trenches the right way. You got Malik Bryant in there yesterday, a big 4-star linebacker. He's gone to different states and taken pieces from there. He's built a pipeline in IMG Academy, one of the preeminent programs in high school football. I think the sky's the limit. Miami realistically can finish with a top 5 class for the 2023 class. And if they can pull off winning 9 or 10 games this year, you might see that be a recurring theme year in and year out. NIL money doesn't hurt, but Mario's been a monster recruiter for a long time.
What are your thoughts on the offensive and defensive side?
We'll start offensively. Anytime you have a star quarterback in college football, you have a really good chance to win football games. And Tyler Van Dyke's a kid that, if you look at any of the draft boards anywhere, he's probably pegged in the top 10 for next year's NFL draft as a redshirt sophomore. The end of last year, he had 6 or 7 straight games, and my memory's not quite right where it used to be. 6 or 7 straight games where he went over 300 yards or 3 touchdowns. And the only other quarterback to do that in the country last year was Kenny Pickett, who was a Heisman finalist. So really great stats for Tyler Van Dyke. I think they're locked in there. They've got a lot of depth, knock on wood in case injury happens. Running back's actually going to be really good. They hit the transfer portal, got Henry Parrish, a 4-star kid who had committed to Ole Miss, played there, and wanted to come back home. He's in the mix with Don Chaney Jr., who's one of the most physically gifted kids Miami's ever had. He's dealt with injuries. Jalen Knight, and we call him the Rooster. Rooster had a great second half of last year where he basically was the only ball carrier getting it. You've got a 240-pound kid by the name of Thaddeus Franklin, who runs a lot like Derrick Henry, big downhill bruiser, but can also break away. And a true freshman named Trevante Citizen, who was a Florida commit for a long time, or a Florida lean for a long time. He ended up choosing Miami. He's a kid that can come in and make a lot of plays and make some things happen. So I think they're loaded there. Receiver's a question mark. Haven't really got a #1 to step in as of yet. Charleston Rambo gone to the NFL. Mike Harley graduated, gone to the NFL. You've got a lot of young kids with prospects, but I got to see it on a Saturday afternoon. Romello Brinson, Jacoby George, Xavier Restrepo, Keyshawn Smith. You get Frankie Lanson in the transfer portal. All could be really good, but they haven't shown it yet. And then tight end should be pretty good with Will Mallory, Elijah Arroyo, Jaleel Skinner, a big 4-star kid that they took from Alabama. The big question, again, comes back to offensive line, and I talked about Alex Mirabel. Zion Nelson's a first-round grade at left tackle. Ja'Kai Clark's getting some Remington Award, preseason nominations at center. You brought in a couple of transfers in Jonathan Dennis, Logan Sagapolu. You get a kid in Jalen Rivers back from injury, who was honestly the best lineman they had last year before he got hurt. He was the only one against Alabama that was getting any kind of movement. But I don't know where everybody fits. I know Nelson will be on the left side. I know Clark's going to be in the middle. But fall camp will really show, what can happen there. So offensively, I think they'll be good. With Josh Gaddis, they're going to be a lot more run-focused and, again, still take some big shots. Not as pass-happy as they were with Rhett Lashley. Defensively becomes really interesting. Last year, Miami was as bad as I've seen defensively, maybe in my lifetime, and I'm 47 years old. You look at, I think they were 128 in missed tackles in the country. I think they had 130 plus missed tackles. Well, that costs you games. That costs you first downs. Keeps drives alive. Really lackluster turning the football over. Part of the reason the chain is gone, I think they only garnered 11 turnovers a year ago, down from 37 in 2017, when they were a team that was able to go out and start the season 10-0. Defensively, they didn't get a lot of pressure. Linebacking core was terrible, and the defensive backfield was kind of in disarray. Good news, Kevin Steele brings a more aggressive approach. You bring in 5 or 6 guys in the transfer portal who will get playing time, and a bunch of them on the defensive line. And you bring in some of the young guys that I was talking about, some edge rushers that are looking for things to happen. They have a 4 or 5-star in Leonard Taylor, who's going to man the defensive tackle position. He's a sophomore, got limited opportunities last year, but flashed when he was on the field. They need a defensive end to step up and get some edge rush, and they need 2 linebackers to figure out who can play. Biggest strength of the defensive side, 3 safeties, all sophomores, all highly recruited. James Williams, 6'5", 220 pounds. He's a missile back there. Made some freshman mistakes, had some issues last year where he was getting penalties for targeting and everything else, but he's flanked by 2 other safeties, Avante Williams and Cam Kitchens, who were both high 4-star level recruits and played a lot as freshmen. Tyreek Stevenson came back for his senior year is huge. You get Darrell Porter Jr. in the portal. You get Al Blades Jr. back from injury and Corey Couch. So you've got 4 or 5 capable corners, not to count some of the young guys. So I think, honestly, defensively, at minimum, they were in the 70s last year defensively. They should at minimum jump up into the 30s, which is probably going to have a lot going on for them to be a lot better this upcoming year.
My next question is, what are your thoughts on the conference as a whole, and what it will be like this upcoming season?
You know, the ACC is much maligned, and it's earned every bit of it. I mean, Clemson was down last year at 10-3, which I think a lot of us would take 10-3 as a season and call that being down. But with them being down, the ACC was out of the playoffs in like early October. There was no chance of anybody making it. The fact that your championship game was Pitt, and oh my goodness, I think they played Wake Forest, if I'm not mistaken. Pitt and Wake was your championship game. Nobody cared. That was a championship game I didn't watch. The conference desperately needs Miami and Florida State, maybe Virginia Tech a little bit, to be pretty good and get back close to where they were early 2000s, mid 2000s as well. Clemson also has to get back to national title level good, which I think they'll be pretty close to this year. I just can't see quarterback being as bad as it was a year ago with DJU. They're going to be healthier at running back, healthier at receiver, healthier on the defensive line. Clemson, to me, is still the class. They're up here. Second, to me, in the conference comes down to NC State, who's going to be really good with Devin Leary at quarterback. Pitt, who gets a transfer, and Keaton Slovis to take over for Kenny Pickett. They're really loaded on the defensive line. I think it's Kalijah Coleman or Kalijah Kingsley. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. They're loaded on the D-line. And then Miami. That's the 3 teams that I think that are playing for second. Wake will be in the mix because they're really good offensively with Sam Hartman. And then the rest of the conference, honestly, is in disarray. You think about the coast. Sam Howell's got it at North Carolina, so they're starting a new quarterback. Virginia Tech's got a new coach and a new quarterback. Virginia's got a really good quarterback in Brennan Armstrong, but a brand new first-time coach in Tony Elliott. Georgia Tech is in complete disarray. Unfortunately, Jeff Collins kind of in a make-it-break-it year for him. And then Duke's got a new coach in Mike Elko. So the coastal is wide open as always. I think Miami and Pitt are a class above. On the Atlantic side, Clemson will be really good, but they lose 2 coordinators for the first time really in 10 years for Dabo Swinney. So I don't know what's going to happen with them. I do think they'll be good. I just mentioned North Carolina State and Wake kind of fighting for that second spot. Florida State, make it break it year for Mike Norvell. They haven't made a bowl game, haven't had a winning record since 2017, which is amazing for the Florida State Seminoles to be that bad. Louisville is okay. Malik Cunningham's good, but they don't really stop anybody under Scott Satterfield. And then who's left? It's Syracuse. It's some other. It's Boston College. Teams that aren't very good. I think personally, Miami and Clemson play in the ACC championship game. And as much as I'd like to take the Canes to win, until proven otherwise, Clemson is the class of the conference, and I think Clemson will end up winning the ACC.
What are your thoughts on the Texas A&M game on September 17th?
So I was looking, it's funny you mentioned that. I was reading about that game today in one of the preview magazines, just trying to get to know Texas A&M better. Obviously, Jimbo Fisher brought in an unbelievable recruiting class. Some have called it the best recruiting class in the history of college football. 33 some odd kids, but they're all freshmen. So what do you expect out of A&M? Well, they've got a quarterback battle. Max Johnson transferred over from LSU, probably going to be the starter. But they've got some younger kids that were in the pipeline that can fight there. They've got a kid named Devin Achane, running back who's a track guy that can fly. Had about 800 yards in backup duty a year ago. You better get him to the ground. And Aeneas Williams, a big wide receiver, had about 45 catches and 600 yards. He can be another one as well. For Miami, it's the first time on the road all year, the first big game in the Mario Cristobal era. And to me, it's going to show me a lot about where you are as a program. You go down there and get your butts whipped like you have in many other big games over the last 20 years. It's the same old Miami, and it's going to be a building process. Go down there and play close. You start to have confidence for the rest of the year. And if you go down there and win a football game, you got a chance really to have a special season. I'm talking 10-11 win good. Tyler Van Dyke being there, he's played in games. He's not going to be afraid of the crowd or anything else. My biggest fear is, can Miami learn how to be Miami again and not psych themselves out before games? We've seen, big games in the last few years where they've just been completely unprepared. I don't think that happens with Mario Cristobal, and I really think that's a fourth quarter game that the better quarterback maybe makes a play, and the better quarterback is wearing orange and green.
Oh, sorry. My next question is, what are your thoughts on playing Virginia at Charlottesville on October 29th?
It's another one that's been a house of horrors for Miami. We have not played well in Charlottesville. Brennan Armstrong and company can throw the ball around. He's a big lefty. They've got a couple of really good receivers and playmakers on the outside. And for whatever reason, Miami just doesn't play well in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's a game that you got to win. These are the type games that Miami has to win. You know, if you lose one every 5 times against a school like Virginia, no problem. You can't lose multiple times in a row or 2 out of 3 to Virginia because the talent level is really not the same between Miami and Virginia. The great elixir, again, is having a great quarterback, and they do have a great quarterback. I'm fascinated to see what Virginia ends up being with new coach Tony Elliott. First time being a head coach. You know, Bronco Mendenhall retired sort of abruptly. Does he coach them well? Do they keep the offensive machine going? Again, I think it's a winnable game for Miami if Mario Cristobal is worth his salt.
What is your early prediction for the season for Miami?
We'll be in Charlotte playing in the ACC championship game. I'm going to Vegas in a couple of weeks, and I will bet money when I'm in Vegas that Miami will be in the ACC championship game. Honestly, I can see them going 10-2.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they beat Texas A&M. Unfortunately, I think they lose to somebody that they're not supposed to lose to, whether it's Pitt, whether it's Virginia, whether it's Virginia Tech, somebody along those lines. They'll probably lose to Clemson on November the 19th. You know, just the thought of going into Death Valley and winning that game. Miami's not at that level yet, but I think they're going to go 10-2. I think they'll play in the ACC championship game, and I think they have a better chance the second time around of beating Clemson than they do the first time. Honestly, they'll probably go 10-3. And again, for me, until you actually win the games against those big name opponents, I'm not going to think they're going to win those games.
And my last question is, what stood out to you during the ACC media availability?
To me, it was the fact that Mario Cristobal, he commands a room. You know, he walked in and he was the big man on campus. And it hasn't been that way. Not against Mark Richt. Mark Richt was always very soft-spoken, very well respected, but soft-spoken. Mario walked in and basically like, we're Miami again. No, we're not going to win a national title today, and the U is not back. Don't ask me that. But he commanded respect in that room as Mario Cristobal. The second thing to me is the conference has no earthly idea what they're going to do with conference realignment, and I'm not sure that Jim Phillips is the right guy leading the charge. They need to be proactive right now. Unfortunately, for years, they've been reactive. And the only thing they seem to be worried about was the out clauses and the money that they could get paid, potentially if the Big Ten or the SEC poached them. I like the conference. I'd like it better if Miami and Florida State and Virginia Tech held up their end of the bargain on the football side. Clemson gets back to a national title level. But I like the fact that Miami has a leader now in Mario Cristobal, who is finally going to be a guy that commands respect. They win 10 games this year, Miami will have a top 5 class, and they'll be ascending back towards the top of college football.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Miami this season, and I'm looking forward to your coverage for the season and the years to come. And I hope to have you back on, maybe to recap a game or something like that. And thanks again for your time.
Anytime, hit me up. You got me on social media at John Michaels U, and I'd love to come on. We can talk ball anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.